Raiders fans, today I'm bringing you 9 major updates that could shape the future of this team. From the offensive line to the defense, and even the upcoming matchup, there's a lot you need to know. So stay with me, because every piece of news connects to the bigger picture of where the Raiders are heading this season. And trust me, you'll want to hear it all. Let's start with one of the most important conversations happening right now, the Raiders' offensive line. Rookie Jackson Powers-Johnson was drafted to be the long-term answer at center, a true anchor for years to come. But head coach Chip Kelly has raised eyebrows with his recent comments. Kelly suggested that Meredith might actually fit better at center. Why? Because of his body type and the way he handles protection calls. He even hinted that JPJ could be better suited at guard, especially when going up against bigger, stronger defensive tackles. Now, here's the problem with that thinking: the Raiders didn't draft JPJ to be just another guard. They drafted him to be the leader in the middle of this line, the same way other franchises lock down their centers for a decade. If the Raiders shuffle him around, they risk missing out on what makes him special: his ability to command the line, handle tough matchups, and bring stability to an area that desperately needs it. So the big question is, will the Raiders actually trust JPJ to grow into that role, or will they make the mistake of moving him around and slowing down his development? Stay with me, because this decision could ripple through the entire season. We've talked about the first big development, now let's move on to another story you need to hear. This one takes us back to the Philadelphia Eagles and a player named Landon Dickerson. When the Eagles drafted Dickerson, the plan was clear: he was supposed to be the heir to Jason Kelce at center. But Kelce didn't retire as quickly as expected, and Dickerson ended up sliding over to left guard. He's thrived there and even became one of the highest paid guards in football, but here's the key point: he never got the chance to be the center he was drafted to be. For the Eagles, that worked out. They had depth, they had options, and they could afford to wait. But the Raiders aren't in the same position. This team doesn't have an all-pro veteran holding down the middle while the rookie develops. The Raiders need stability at center right now. They don't have the luxury of parking Jackson Powers-Johnson at guard for the next few years and hoping things sort themselves out. That's why this situation feels so much more urgent. JPJ wasn't brought in to be just another piece on the offensive line, he was brought in to fix a problem that's been lingering for too long. Misplacing his talent the way the Eagles did with Dickerson could set this team back instead of moving it forward. So here's the question every fan should be asking: will the Raiders recognize what they have in JPJ before it's too late, or will history repeat itself? Stay locked in, because the next part of this story shows just how risky it can be to rely on coaching decisions that don't always pan out. Let's shift the focus to a powerful example from around the league, one that shows exactly what the Raiders could be missing. When the Kansas City Chiefs drafted Creed Humphrey, they weren't looking to move him around or experiment with different spots on the offensive line. They drafted him with one clear purpose: to be Patrick Mahomes' center for the next decade. And it worked. Humphrey quickly developed into one of the league's best centers, becoming the kind of steady anchor every franchise dreams of having in front of its quarterback. That's the kind of blueprint the Raiders need to follow with Jackson Powers-Johnson. He isn't just a big, strong rookie who can fill in wherever you need him, he has the potential to be that same anchor for years to come. A center who doesn't just hold the line but elevates the entire offense, especially in the run game. Think about it, the Raiders have struggled for years to find stability up front. Plugging JPJ into guard might solve a short-term issue, but it ignores the long-term picture. If you believe he's elite at center, that's where he has to play. That's how you build continuity. That's how you build dominance. Because the truth is, quarterbacks can only do so much if the middle of the offensive line is unstable. Look at the Chiefs: Mahomes thrives partly because he knows he has one of the best centers in the league snapping the ball every play. So here's the real question: will the Raiders give JPJ the same chance to become their version of Creed Humphrey? Stick around, because the next part digs into why coaching decisions sometimes clash with what fans, and even players, know is best. Here's where things get a little tricky, because coaching decisions aren't always as perfect as they seem. We've seen this before. Remember the Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler era? Draft decisions, free agent signings, even basic roster management, they got too many of those calls wrong. And the team is still paying the price today. It's proof that just because someone carries the title of a professional, it doesn't automatically mean every evaluation is the right one. That brings us to Chip Kelly's recent comments. On the surface, it sounds convincing. Jordan Meredith is quicker, makes cleaner protection calls, and might fit the mold of what Kelly wants in a center. But here's the concern, is that a short-sighted view? Because protection calls are important, sure, but that's also one of the most teachable skills on the field. Physical dominance and rare talent? You can't coach that into someone, you either have it, or you don't. And Jackson Powers Johnson has already shown he has it. We're not talking about a prospect with potential. We've seen the tape. As a rookie, he held his own against monsters like Vita Vea and Cam Hayward, two of the most physical defensive tackles in the entire league. How many first-year players can say that? Almost none. JPJ's ceiling is higher than just being good enough at guard. He has the tools to become one of the best centers in football if the staff lets him. So the real issue isn't whether JPJ can handle the role, it's whether this coaching staff will recognize what they truly have in him before it's too late. And speaking of adjustments, there's another big storyline developing with the Raiders, this time involving Jamal Adams and his surprising position switch. Stick around for that. Let's talk about what happens when coaching staffs recognize elite talent, and what happens when they don't. Right now, the Raiders are in a situation where the offensive line is struggling. They're not generating consistent push in the run game, and protection has been shaky. So here's the question, if you know Jackson Powers Johnson can be an elite center, why keep him at guard just to patch holes? If the bigger body makes sense inside against defensive tackles, fine, but if the offense is still stalling, maybe it's time to rethink the plan. Because here's the truth, sometimes the best move isn't to play it safe, but to put your most talented player in the position where he can impact the game the most. And for JPJ, that's center. Slide Meredith to guard, let JPJ command the middle, and suddenly the line looks different. The foundation feels stronger. Fans aren't blind to this either. The criticism has been loud, across social media, in the stands, everywhere. And coaches hear it. Pete Carroll himself was seen chest-bumping JPJ in practice, a playful gesture, sure, but also a reminder that this kid is special. It almost felt like a message to the fans, we believe in him. And why shouldn't they? JPJ showed as a rookie that he could go toe-to-toe with some of the league's best, even future Hall of Famers. That's not just another lineman, that's someone you build around. The sooner the Raiders act on that, the faster this offense can turn the corner. But while the JPJ debate rages on, there's another storyline developing on the defensive side of the ball, one involving Jamal Adams and a new role that could shape the Raiders' season. Stay tuned for that. The defense has been under the spotlight, and one of the biggest talking points right now is Jamal Adams and how this coaching staff plans to use him. Adams was brought in with a reputation, hard-hitting, versatile, a safety who can line up all over the field. But here's the catch, if you don't maximize his strengths, you're not getting the best version of him. That's exactly what fans have been wondering, are the Raiders just plugging him into a role, or are they designing a system that lets Adams thrive? Early signs suggest a shift is happening. Adams has been spotted lining up closer to the line of scrimmage, almost like a hybrid linebacker. That's where his instincts and physicality stand out most, blitzing, disrupting plays in the backfield, and keeping offenses on their heels. If the Raiders commit to this adjustment, it could turn a defensive weakness into a strength. Of course, it's a gamble. Moving Adams around means other players must step up in coverage. But here's where the excitement comes in, if it works, the Raiders could suddenly have one of the most disruptive chess pieces in the entire AFC West. And in a division where you're facing quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert, unpredictability on defense can be the difference between a win and a loss. The real question now is whether the coaching staff will double down on this experiment, or retreat back to safer, more traditional roles. Because Adams isn't built to play safe. He's built to tilt the game. And just when you think that's the biggest adjustment, there's still another storyline brewing with the Raiders, this one involving the bigger picture of their playoff hopes. Stick around for that. The last piece of today's puzzle is the upcoming matchup, and it's loaded with question marks because of how banged up the Bears are right now. Their offensive line could be in real trouble if Darnell Wright isn't at full strength. Without him, Chicago would be left scrambling with no reliable tackle on either side, and that's exactly the kind of opportunity a player like Maxx Crosby lives for. We've seen what happens when Crosby gets favorable matchups, he can completely take over a game. But the injuries don't stop there. DeAndre Swift has been battling multiple issues, and if he's limited or even out, the Bears' backfield gets very thin very quickly. That would put even more pressure on their rookie options, who just haven't shown they can carry the load yet. Now, don't get it twisted, the Bears still have weapons. Their offensive interior is stacked with proven talent like Joe Thuney and Drew Dalman, and their receiver group is dangerous. Luther Burden is emerging as a breakout star, Rome Odunze is drawing comparisons to A.J. Brown, and D.J. Moore has already proven he can produce. The talent is there, but if their protection falters, it may not matter. That's why this matchup feels so unpredictable. On one hand, the Bears have firepower. On the other hand, the Raiders' defense has the perfect chance to exploit Chicago's weak spots if the injuries pile up. The only thing we know for sure is this: health could decide everything. If the Bears come in short-handed, Las Vegas has a real opportunity to flip this game on its head. And here's the twist: tomorrow's injury update could completely change how this game looks. That's the news every Raider fan will be waiting for. Here's where things start to get really interesting: the Bears' latest injury report might just be the best news Las Vegas could hope for heading into this matchup. First off, linebacker T.J. Edwards didn't practice. He's the heart of Chicago's run defense, and without him, their ability to stop Josh Jacobs or anyone pounding the rock takes a huge hit. That alone tilts the balance toward the Raiders. But it doesn't stop there. Cornerback Kyler Gordon is also sidelined with a hamstring issue. Losing a starter in the secondary against Davante Adams and Jakobi Meyers? That's the kind of mismatch Derek Carr, the Raiders' offense, will want to exploit all day long. The defensive line could also be in trouble. Grady Jarrett may miss time, and if he does, the Bears will be forced to lean on unproven guys like Dexter, Turner, and Pickens. None of them bring the same consistency or disruption, and that could give Las Vegas the upper hand in the trenches. And then there's the offensive side of the ball. Right tackle Darnell Wright missed snaps last week with an elbow issue. If he can't go, the Bears literally have no reliable tackles. That's prime hunting ground for Maxx Crosby and the Raiders' pass rush. Add in running back DeAndre Swift being questionable with a hip injury, and suddenly Chicago's backfield might be down to rookies like Roscoe Johnson, who hasn't shown he can carry an offense. So here's the bottom line: the Bears are limping into this game, and every injury makes life easier for Las Vegas. But the big question now: will the Raiders capitalize on these opportunities, or let a wounded team hang around? Stick around, because that answer could define their season. Raiders fans, don't be fooled by the Bears' injury list, because when it comes to pure offensive talent, this group can still be dangerous. It starts up front with their interior offensive line. Joe Thuney at left guard is an all-pro caliber player, Drew Dalman has been paid like one of the league's best centers, and Jonah Jackson was a key starter for the Lions before Chicago traded for him. That kind of interior strength gives any quarterback time to work the middle of the field, and it makes running between the tackles a real threat. But the real excitement is at the skill positions. Rookie wide receiver Luther Burden is already starting to make noise, putting up over 100 yards and a touchdown just last week. He's explosive, and he looks more and more like a future star with every snap. Then there's Rome Odunze, the player many are already comparing to A.J. Brown. Big, physical, tough after the catch, he's clearly emerging as Chicago's true WR1. And when you pair him with D.J. Moore, a proven and consistent receiver, you suddenly have a duo that can challenge any secondary in the league. Add tight end Cole Kmet to the mix, steady, reliable, and dangerous in the red zone, and it's clear this offense has multiple ways to attack. Now here's where things get tricky for the Raiders: their secondary has shown cracks, and going up against someone like O'Dunn's could push those weaknesses to the surface. If the pass rush doesn't get home, this group of Bears weapons is capable of doing serious damage. So the question becomes, can the Raiders' defense step up and contain this arsenal, or will Chicago's young stars make Sunday their breakout stage? Stick around, because that battle could decide everything.